Chapter 1, Lesson 6 in Geometry, Determining the Angle Measure. In the last video we talked about what an angle is, how it's formed with the rays, the vertex. In this lesson we're going to learn how to measure it. And some of you have had experience with measuring an angle before, some of you haven't. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we need to know about angle measure. One way to measure an angle is in degrees. Okay, so the units are going to be in degrees. To indicate the size or degree measure of an angle, you write a lowercase m in front of the angle symbol. So the degree measure angle of angle A over here is 80, and you show that by writing the measure of angle A is equal to 80. Alright, so again, we can break that paragraph down. The angle measure are always going to be in degrees, and we put a little lowercase m in front of the name in order to indicate that we're talking about the measure. So here, rather than just saying angle A is equal to 80, we put the measure of angle A is equal to 80. That way the person reading it understands, oh, that 80 represents 80 degrees. If you just put angle A equals 80, it really leaves open a little bit of uncertainty. So again, the measure is just another way to be a little bit more accurate about naming the measure of an angle or to indicate the degrees. Okay, so that's how you measure it. Now we have what we use, or we use what we have. I don't even know what I meant there. The way we measure it is, you know, with a segment, with things that are straight, we use a ruler. Well, you can't really use a ruler because you're measuring the distance, that area in between an angle. So we use what we call a protractor. And this protractor postulate is kind of the same as that ruler postulate that we talked about earlier when measuring. You have to give each point a single number, and then once you have the number, we use the absolute value to actually find the distance. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing here, where each point, each ray gets a number, and then you line up the difference between them is going to give you the measure. But one of those is always going to be 0. So this is what a protractor looks like. And so here we have this angle. I'm going to use something else here a little bit easier. Okay, so here's this angle right here marked in red. So this area all inside of here is what would be considered the angle. So what's the measure of the angle? So if you look at your protractor, and all protractors are different, so you kind of have to look at the one you have. You'll notice that there's a line here, a horizontal line that goes across the bottom here, and this vertical line here, and they always meet at a point. And on some protractors they meet at a point up in here, some protractors they meet at a point down here, but and the bottom edge of the protractor is that horizontal line, so you kind of have to look and see what you have as to what yours is. But that point right there is very significant because that's what you're going to use to determine the measure. So you take this point where they meet, and that point there goes on the vertex of the angle. So if you put that point and move this over so that that's on the vertex of the angle, you'll notice, and then you line up the bottom edge or the horizontal line, depending again upon your protractor, with that line. You'll notice that this side of the angle right here is lined up with this horizontal edge. You then look at the other ray and you look at where it crosses up here in the number, and you'll notice it crosses right up here across the number 60 and the number 120. So what's the measure of the angle? Well, is it 60 or is it 120? Well, you notice that there's two scales along this protractor, one that starts at 0 over here on the right and goes up or all the way around here to the left, and this one starts at 0 on the left and goes all the way up here down to 0 on the right. Well, that's set up that way, so depending upon which way your angle is pointing, you can measure the angle from either direction. So here, the angle, the line that I have measured up on the horizontal here is at 0, so that would be considered my 0 or my starting point. And so then I would count this way in order to get to the other side of the ray, which is right here. So starting at 0 and counting up this way, I get all the way up to 60, so this would be a 60-degree angle. Now let me reverse this and show you why we need to have that other side and how that works. So let me see if I can do this kind of fancy flipping y-axis. Okay, so notice now that the angle is pointing the other way. How do I measure it? Whoops, don't want to turn that. Look too far. So I take my protractor and I take that middle point. I set it down on the vertex of the angle, and I line up this side with the horizontal. So now this is again, this side that lines up here is always the 0 side. So I go to the outside measure where this is 0, and now the angle goes this way. So I'll count up the axis on the outside, and again I'll get to 60. So I get the same measurement no matter which way I go. So that's why there's two scales on there, because it depends upon which way your angle opens up. Okay, so that's how you determine the measure of the angle. And again, you can do this with all types of angles, and you can and it doesn't matter which way the angles point, because you can make your protractor do anything you want. So here are a number of different angles, so we can go ahead and measure any of these that we want. So I'm going to go ahead and make this protractor a little bit smaller to help us out here. Alright, we're going to use the same thing, and I'm going to go ahead and measure angle N here. So I do the same thing that I would do on all these other ones. I find my point right here, and I need to line that up with my vertex. Okay, let's line that up with my vertex. And now I need to put either this line or this line so it's on the horizontal. Okay, so if I did it like this, is that going to help me measure the angle? Well, no, because now here's the angle. Which way does the angle go? The angle goes up this way, so I need to turn my protractor so that the horizontal is lined up as close as I can. Alright, so here's my vertex. Notice that this angle is on the horizontal, and that's always going to be my 0. So I'm using the outside scale here, and I count my way up, and so this ends up being a 40-degree angle. Okay, let's do angle L here. So again, we do the same thing. We take that and we line that up to my vertex, and then again, one side needs to be lined up with the horizontal. So I'll do that. And again, why don't I want to do it this way? Because the angle opens this way. Okay, so I need to turn this so that this is lined up on horizontal. There we go. So this is horizontal. This is the 0. The 0 is on the horizontal, so I start 0 here, and I count all the way around until I get to my angle. So this goes all the way up to 130. So this is a 130-degree angle. Now I want to show you something different. What if I lined up this side with horizontal? What if I choose to do this? Would I get something different or the same? So if I put this right here, now this is my horizontal, so this is my 0. So the angle opens up this way, so I'm going to start at 0 on the outside units here, walk all my way around, and again I get to 130. So it doesn't matter which side, which ray you put up as the horizontal, as long as that starts at 0, and then you just follow the scale as the angle opens up that way, and that's how you measure or determine the measure of an angle.